Hi, and welcome to Scott's Amateur Woodshop. I'm coming at you today to show you my tool chest. And it is based on the book The Anarchist Tool Chest by Chris Schwarz, which is presents a classic design for a tool chest that's very functional. I wanted to show you mine, how it differs from the book in some ways, how it follows the book in most ways, and show you what I'm glad that I did and what I regret. And I hope that you learned something. And if you haven't picked up the book, look on Lost Art Press's website for the Anarchist Tool Chest, and I recommend that book highly. It's about one third about aesthetic anarchism, which is an interesting read, and talks about tendencies of who you might want to support, people like yourself, small business people, which is interesting. It's about one third about how to make a tool chest, and it's about one third about what to put in that tool chest. And those things are all kind of knitted together into one coherent whole. So anyway, it's a great book. I recommend it. And I will show you mine. So the first thing that's very different about mine from the one in the book is that mine is not painted. I just have a hard time painting over natural wood. And honestly, as it fades and gets a little dingy, I'm starting to think it might look better with a coat of paint on it. And that's an easy decision to change. So I'm not upset that I didn't paint it. I can always paint it later. I am kind of looking forward to the radiant beauty of the natural wood on the inside being revealed in contrast to the painted outside. That's not to brag, that's just, I like wood a lot. That's why I work with it. I find it to be beautiful. So you've also noticed I used this, throughout I used brass hardware, and I haven't done anything to age it, and it's developing a patina naturally, and it's kind of the way I like to do it. Old new things should look new, and old things should look old, wabi sabi, right? So you'll also notice I put these legs on it. I'm sorry, I'm going to stick with one fixed camera angle for today, but you'll have to take my word for it that these have casters on it right here, and they hinge upward. And that's kind of an unconventional thing that I did, but I do feel happy that I did it because, like right now, I have a router box under here, and I just needed this real estate. So sometimes it is helpful to put it up on its legs, but I will say it has to be approached with care. The tool chest is very heavy for one person to handle, so I tend to either have someone help or unload most of it before putting it up or down off of its legs. That's been a good decision, but it's not the only way to go. It's not a necessary feature. It's a nice to have if you need it. Another thing that I did that differed from the book is the book has a frame and panel lid that's groove and groove. So the outside frame is grooved like you might expect, and then the panel is also grooved and mates with it like this. So this panel in the center actually sits proud of the outside. I decided that I would rather have a flush lid. I'm sure the way they do it in the book is fine. I just thought it would be a little easier to use as a saw bench if I didn't have, if it was flush everywhere. Although I am maybe missing the features of a bench hook by not having that. So I don't know. I think either way is fine, and it's personal preference, and no big regrets there. So now we get to one of the next things that's very noticeable about my tool chest, which is the size. The size of this, I'm going to measure from the interior because I think those are the most important aspects of the size. Instead of 24 by 24 by, I think, over 3 feet, as suggested in the book, I followed the principles instead of the dimensions in the book and sized it to my saws, which I decided were going to be small, right? I got these panel saws instead of full-size hand saws and didn't leave too much room for my hand. And so I came up with smaller dimensions. So my tool chest on the inside is 16.5 deep by 18.5 tall. Considerably, it's about 3/4 of 24 by 3/4 of 24, right? And then the length is, oh, I'm gonna need a longer ruler. The length on the interior is 28. So that's considerably smaller than 3 feet. So if you take 1/4 off each dimension, your total volume is something like half. So I really lost a lot of space in an attempt to make this something that one person can handle. And the problem with that is one person really can't handle it very easily because of the weight. So I end up having to unload it to have one person carry it, or just have a second person help anyway. So honestly, I think probably making it from the dimensions in the book would be better. But if you really insist on sizing it to your tools, I would just say be generous, leave extra space. If you're going to try to stick to the idea from the book that if it won't fit, you don't need it, it really helps if you leave enough room for things to be generously sized. However, if you do what I did, and you pack everything very tight, there are things you can do to work your way around it. And I will show you, for example, the sliding tills. Now, if you read the book, you know that these are intended so that you can array them like so. Maybe on camera it would be better if I had them reversed. But they're designed so that you can see I have my measuring and marking tools here. So if I array these like so, my hammer in the second one down is within one motion to reach, and so is my square on the top. So that's the intent of it. I use those same rails to store my saw till, but that means it's in the way. So to use this tool chest, the idea is first you take, I actually have really packed it to the gills, so I even have this tray here that I made, and this stores kind of odds and ends or things that don't have a good place. So you need to remove that and set it perhaps on the bench, on the shelf rather, underneath the workbench. Then you take the saw nest out. I'll show you the saw nest. I'm very happy with this. I put rip saws on one side and crosscut saws on the other, so you've got a rip dovetail saw, crosscut carcass, rip sash, crosscut panel fine, rip panel, crosscut panel coarse, and then I keep a couple of other saws in the back, like an Azubiki and a Ryoba usually has a place there, and a fret saw. So what I do with this is I set it on the front skirt and I put this hook here, and believe it or not, this keeps my saw nest accessible while the tool chest is actually in use. Of course, the idea is you keep the dust out and the rust that comes with it by keeping the lid shut and all of it packed inside. But when you're using it, you first take the saw nest out and the tray, and then you would take the hand planes that you need out of the bottom. So just to show you what that looks like, I could pull out my jointer plane and I could set it on the shelf under my workbench. And whatever planes I'm going to use for that session. And then I could array my tills like so or like so. I will move the camera, I think, towards the end of the video to show you a couple other things. But for now, why don't I show you each of my trays. This is kind of a bag stuffed with rags, soaked with oil, for wiping oil onto tools. I have a pencil box, I have some measuring and marking tools, squares, sliding bevels, things like that. This is the top tray of my bench. It's only about 1.5 inches tall, and it slides on the widest rails. I'll set that on my workbench and show you the next one. This has hammers and screwdrivers mainly. You can see all the things here. This one also gets used pretty often. Screwdrivers are a common tool. I've also got some nail pullers, and some soft-jawed pliers, and some other odds and ends like that. All those dovetails were fun to make, by the way. I didn't put hardware, by the way, on these boxes. I like just leaving these holes here. You can easily pull them with your finger. There's nothing sticking out that's going to dent anything, and you get the full width of these. Yeah, can you imagine cutting all these dovetails by hand? That was really fun. Yeah, so these are tools that I use less often. I've got some side rabbet planes, some little detail carving tools in a Trusco box, spare irons for my plow plane, spare blades for all kinds of tools in here if there's an extra blade for it. There's a fence for my router plane in here. These are just things that get used much less often. I have a drill index here. I have drawboard pins here. Yeah, so that's what's in here. Put that on the workbench. And then I will take you inside for one look. You can see on the front wall. Sorry about that. Yep. Okay. You can see on the front wall here, there are a bunch of chisels, a couple of saws, a marking knife, and then the bottom is mostly hand planes. There's a box of spare plane blades, there's a panel gauge, a few long tools, but mostly that's it. The idea, the way you work out of a tool chest, as I mentioned, involves partially unloading it, and then, of course, working with the tills arrayed. So I will say, for me, that's been a lot of the real value of the book. Has been, there's this idea of you can French fit everything or NASA fit everything, or you can leave things more kind of loose. I have tried to find a happy medium so things aren't too tight or too loose, but things have a place, and it makes it easy to find and easy to put things away. If my bench gets a little too messy, I play a quick game of put 10 things away, and it's very easy because everything has a place. And it's really taught me a lot about organization, so that's one reason that I value that book, The Anarchist Tool Chest, very much. And this tool chest overall, has served me well. I think I would build it more like the size suggested in the book if I was going to do it again. And I would paint it. And I probably will paint this one. So that's really it. I would highly recommend the book, The Anarchist Tool Chest. I would highly recommend building one for yourself. And I would highly recommend disobeying the author in a couple of areas that seem useful to you. Follow your inspiration, think it through carefully, cross-check it against the principles in the book about sizing things to your tools and to the human body. 24-inch depth, for example, is a good maximum depth because it's about the length of our arms. That's why they design kitchen countertops that way, right? So that pretty much concludes the video for today. Thank you for putting up with this weird camera angle, and this has been a little bit of a tough video to film. This is my third take. So anyway, please use the buttons down below, like, dislike, subscribe, thank, etc. Check out the description for a link to the Anarchist Tool Chest book and anything else that I might have forgotten to say. And if you have any comments that come to mind, please post them. I do respond to virtually all my comments, so you will get a response. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this tour of my tool chest, and I hope you have a wonderful evening. Good night.